I could feel the tension in the air the moment I walked through the door. Emma, my wife, was lounging on the couch, scrolling on her phone, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of her lips. "Go home if you're jealous," she said casually, not even looking up. The words hit me like a slap. Jealous? Me? I had never felt that way. Not like this. And yet, something in her tone, that faint teasing mixed with defiance, made my chest tighten. For weeks, I had noticed little things. Messages disappearing when she picked up her phone too quickly, whispered laughter when I entered the room unexpectedly, subtle excuses for leaving the house late. I had brushed most of it off, telling myself I was being paranoid, imagining shadows where there were none. But tonight, the unease was undeniable. I stared at her for a moment, my mind racing. I wanted to confront her, demand the truth, but her words echoed in my head. "Go home if you're jealous." And so I did. I grabbed my coat slowly, feeling her eyes flick up to me, mocking and curious at the same time. Without a word, I stepped outside, the cool night air hitting my face, grounding me in the reality of the situation. The streets were quiet, almost eerily so. I walked without direction, my thoughts looping in a painful, obsessive cycle. I imagined what she might be doing, who she might be with, and the sharp sting of betrayal tightened around my heart. But I didn't want to overreact. I reminded myself that leaving was the opposite of surrender. It was a test, a way to see her reaction when I wasn't underfoot, when my presence wasn't a constant reassurance she could take for granted. Hours passed. I sat on a bench in the park, listening to the rustle of leaves and the distant hum of traffic. Every shadow seemed like a hint. Every laugh from a passing group felt like a confirmation of my fears. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to breathe, to wait. Waiting was the hardest part. Patience was a weapon I hadn't used often in marriage, but tonight it was my shield. Meanwhile, back at home, I imagined Emma pacing the living room, maybe even realizing what she had pushed me to do. She had underestimated my ability to control my reaction, to act in a way that wasn't impulsive, yet still powerful. I thought about her smile, her casual shrug, and I wondered, would she notice the absence of my usual presence, my laughter, my easy companionship, or would she feel relief at the temporary freedom, thinking she had won some subtle victory? By midnight, exhaustion began to creep in, but I refused to go home. I stayed outside, walking through quiet streets, revisiting every memory we had shared over the years. The small, seemingly insignificant moments that now felt like evidence of a bond she was willing to test. Each memory sharpened the ache in my chest, but also solidified my resolve. I wasn't going to overreact. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to let the consequences of her words unfold naturally. Around 2 a.m., I returned to my apartment building. Not our shared home, but my temporary sanctuary for the night. I sat in the dark, reflecting on our life together. Marriage had always been a delicate balance between love, trust, and compromise. But tonight, that balance had tipped, and she had unknowingly handed me the power to decide the next move. I wasn't thinking about confrontation anymore. I was thinking about clarity, about forcing truth to surface without manipulation, without anger, just pure consequence. As the first rays of dawn crept through the curtains, I heard the faint sound of the door unlocking in my mind. Her return, her realization. I didn't need to imagine too long. I had prepared for this night, for this moment. My absence would speak louder than any argument, any raised voice, any pleading. And when she finally stepped through the door, unaware of what awaited her, she would see that I wasn't gone because I was jealous. I was gone because I refused to be taken for granted. I was gone because I wanted her to understand that words, her careless, flippant words, carry weight. I had given her the space she demanded, and in that space, the truth would emerge. I settled into the quiet, letting the suspense stretch, knowing the moment of revelation was coming. And when it did, it would shock her more than anything I could have said in anger. Because tonight wasn't just about me leaving. It was about showing her, in the most undeniable way, that my absence could not be ignored. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute. The house was too quiet, too clean, too painfully empty, without her presence moving from room to room. I paced between the kitchen and the living room like someone waiting for a verdict. Every sound, the hum of the fridge, the tick of the clock, felt louder than it should have been. I kept checking my phone, even though no new message appeared. She hadn't texted, not even a call, nothing. Around 2 a.m., I finally sank into the couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment she told me, "If you're jealous, just go home." And I had. For the first time in our marriage, I didn't fight to stay. She wasn't there when I fell asleep, and she wasn't there when I woke up. Instead, I woke to the sound of the front door slamming. Her footsteps were fast, angry fast. The kind of footsteps that meant she had rehearsed this conversation in her head all night. Seriously, she snapped as she stormed into the living room. Her makeup was smudged, her hair messy like she'd barely slept, and her eyes were wild, somewhere between fear and fury. "You actually left?" I sat up slowly, feeling exhaustion in every bone. "You told me to." "And you listened?" Her voice cracked on that last word. Not with anger this time, with something softer. Something like disbelief. "Yes," I said simply. "I listened." She stared at me like she couldn't process it, like the idea of me actually walking away, even temporarily, had never been a possibility in her mind. I'd always been the one who chased, who apologized first, who tried to fix things before they cracked too deeply. I'd always fought for us. She had no idea what it felt like when I didn't. "What happened?" I asked finally. "Where were you last night?" She didn't answer at first. She threw her purse on the table, kicked off her heels, and sank into the chair across from me like all the adrenaline had suddenly drained out of her. "I went back to the party," she said quietly. "Stayed with my friends." "Just friends?" I asked. Her head snapped toward me. "Yes, obviously." But the word obviously felt anything but. "Look," she sighed, rubbing her temples. "You embarrass me." Walking out like that made things weird. "I wasn't trying to embarrass you. I just listened to what you said." She stared at me for so long, I almost looked away. "But you've never done that before," she whispered. "You've never left." Something in her chest tightened. I could see it. Maybe she finally understood how easy it is to lose the person who's always been there. "I didn't leave you," I said. "I left the situation." "Same thing," she murmured. "It wasn't." But arguing didn't matter right then. "What do you want me to say?" she asked. "I was drunk." I said something stupid. I didn't mean it. "You meant something," I replied softly. Maybe not the exact words, but you meant the tone, the dismissal, like my feelings were an inconvenience. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. That silence said more than her words ever could. "You're jealous," she finally said. "You always have been." "I'm not jealous," I said. "I'm hurt. There's a difference." Her eyes flicked up to mine, and for the first time since she walked in, she really looked at me, like she was seeing the exhaustion, the worry, the way my voice kept steady only because I had no strength left to raise it. She looked away quickly. "Why didn't you call me?" I asked, "or even text?" "Because I didn't know what to say," she whispered. I thought you'd come back." I let the weight of that sink in. She thought I'd come back. Not because she asked. Not because she apologized. But because she assumed I always would. "You know," I said quietly, "that assumption might be the problem." Her breath caught. For the first time, she looked scared. Not irritated. Not defensive. Just scared. "Do you want to leave me?" she asked, almost too softly to hear. "No," I answered. "But I want you to treat me like you don't want to lose me either." The room fell silent. Heavy. Thick. She stood up slowly and walked toward me, sitting beside me on the couch. She didn't touch me at first. She just sat close enough to let me feel her warmth. "I was stupid," she whispered. "I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have pushed you. I shouldn't have made you feel like you didn't matter." Her voice broke on the last word. I didn't say anything. Not yet. She reached for my hand carefully, like she wasn't sure I'd take it. "I'm sorry," she said, this time without excuses attached. "I don't want to lose you. I don't want you to think I don't care." Her eyes glistened. "How do we fix this?" she asked. And that That was the first real question she'd asked all night. I didn't have the full answer. Not yet. But for the first time, she finally seemed ready to hear it.